Yeah, I'll react to that. Sure. Hey guys, this could be. I can't talk. This could be a cool video. I gave it a preemptive sub and like. I can't talk right now, just because it seems like a really cool topic. I'm assuming he's gonna go kind of chronological, so it'd be interesting to see as countries join what was going on at the time that made them want to join, and maybe a few of the feuds, because I know you need every member to be on the side of letting a member in, and so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of complicated stuff um, uh, to learn about here. Okay, my name's Connor. I like to learn about things. The original link to the video, top of the description. Below that, link to the Discord. We'd love to have you. Let's go.
The North Atlantic Treaty Organization is the most powerful alliance in the world. It is no surprise that 30 countries are currently members of it. If we get out the chalkboard and think about why countries
I freaking love North Macedonia's flag and Spain.
do or do not join, some of the reasons are straightforward. But looking at it deeper, some of the reasons are downright bizarre and a matter of technicalities. With that in mind, here is why every member of NATO joined the alliance, but everyone else has not. To truly understand NATO, we must go back to its founding. Lord Ismay, the first Secretary General of NATO, said it best. The purpose of NATO is to keep the Russians out, the Americans in, and the Germans down. The first bit is straightforward. It's the only thing people born after 1940 think about, which at this point is just about all of us. Keeping the Americans in seems odd, but it is a basic part of alliance politics. The central fear of protege states is that their patrons will abandon them in the time of crisis. After all, the US had sat out the first 2 years of World War II, and Europe did not want to repeat that experience. Keeping the Germans down is downright bizarre in the modern context.
I say this quite a bit. Like, I think it's time that aren't there still restrictions on Japanese and German militaries holdover restrictions from World War II. But from this point, understand you just had two wars within like 20 years that were Germany's fault. Sorry, World War One. I cannot say is Germany's fault. Okay, I remember even I had a paper and an essay in college to write about, and I think it was a cool exercise. It's I, obviously you can be like, oh, what are the causes of World War One? But just pick a nation that you think might have been most for it and give your reason. I chose Germany just because I think Wilhelm II was they seemed like ready to go, and Wilhelm II seemed to be very not treading light. Anyways, I wasn't an expert then. I'm not an expert now, but so no, I take that back. I'm not saying Germany was.
But remember that the
World War
treaty
One.
was signed in 1949, just 4 years after World War II ended, and less than 30 years after World War I ended. No one in the West wanted to play this game a third time. This takes us to the founding members of NATO: Belgium, Canada, Denmark, France, Iceland, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, the United Kingdom, and the United States.
Thank you, one of you guys pointing me out. I asked a question about Iceland and then if they're in NATO, and they're one of the founding members. Sorry about that. Thanks for answering.
Portugal, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Each of those had the three central interests in mind when signing. Greece and Turkey would hop along a few years later for the same reasons. West Germany joined next in 1955, which represented a large shift in priorities. The whole keep the Germans down thing quickly got blown up. Instead, the goal became to rebuild West Germany. Part of this was to integrate West Germany within NATO's military apparatus so that there would not be another war against that government. But NATO also desperately wanted West German soldiers to compete with the seemingly endless throngs of potential Soviet invaders. The Soviet Union was especially annoyed with West German ascension, leading to the Warsaw Pact to form as a counterbalance. It featured Albania, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, East Germany, Hungary, Poland, and Romania. The pact would serve as the primary NATO foil for the rest of the Cold War. In 1966, France pulled out of NATO's integrated command force. Charles de Gaulle, the head of France at the time, despite wanting to maintain NATO membership, still sought more strategic independence. Part of that was wanting to avoid the United States and the United Kingdom dragging de Gaulle into a war that was not in France's best interest.
Excuse me? Okay, sorry.
This is a problem de Gaulle into a war that was not in
that's reasonable for him to think, but never mind.
France's best interest. This is a problem known as entrapment. It's the other major issue that comes along with alliances. Think of it as the flip side of the abandonment issue that we talked about earlier. Spain was the final addition during the Cold War, joining in 1982. The delay was because Francisco Franco ruled Spain up until 1975. He worried that a NATO member would veto Spain's entry due to his help to the Axis during World War II and the autocratic nature of his government. Article 10 of the North Atlantic Treaty requires unanimous agreement among existing members for a state to join, so it is a hard bar to meet. Then the Cold War ended. No more Soviet Union, and no more Warsaw Pact. Free from Soviet influence, the remaining pact countries began reevaluating their positions. Almost by default, East Germany entered the NATO alliance in 1990 as a part of its merger with West Germany.
Did Ukraine gain independence just as soon as Russia fell like the other ones, or did it take it a bit longer? Because why didn't Ukraine immediately, maybe they didn't...
The Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland were the first all-new countries added, entering in 1999. It is not a coincidence that the Soviet Union had invaded each of these countries. Remember the keep the Russians out part? Yeah, they were all for that. In fact, the general consensus among the non-Soviet Warsaw Pact states became NATO membership. Bulgaria, Romania, and Slovakia joined in 2004. Albania was the only holdout. The 2004 class also included Slovenia, a western-facing former Yugoslav republic that had made NATO membership a priority from its independence. But the biggest blow to Russia was Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania's pivot toward the West. Prior to World War II, each was an independent country. However, they were occupied during the war and integrated into the Soviet Union afterward. Joining NATO was a step to ensure that that would not happen again. In 2009, Albania finally joined. In doing so, it became the last non-Soviet Warsaw Pact defector. Albania wanted to obtain membership sooner.
Serbia?
However, NATO requires that countries have some level of domestic stability before joining. This is where things went wrong in 1997, when Albania spiraled into a civil war due to rampant pyramid schemes. Yes, I said pyramid schemes. The government was blamed for its complicity. About 2/3 of the population were involved.
A government pyramid scheme?
The government was blamed for its complicity. About 2/3 of the population were involved in the scams, leading to 6 months of unrest. It took 12 years for Albania to reach a point of stability to earn entry into NATO. Croatia joined them also in 2009, delayed by turbulence from its War of Independence, and France reintegrated with the unified command structure at that time. Montenegro joined in 2017 after working toward membership since its independence in 2006, though NATO's popularity in that country is mixed due to the scars of NATO's campaign against Slobodan Milosevic in 1999. North
What's Serbia's deal, guys? Do they have like a weird like kind of relationship with Russia?
Macedonia is the most recent entry, coming in 2019. The delay here was another weird one. Greece and the country formerly known as Macedonia were in a dispute over the latter's name.
Just call it North.
Greece has an internal administrative region called Macedonia, dating back to the ancient era. Greeks worried that a country named Macedonia would implicitly have a desire to expand its borders to reclaim all areas
now we're
with the
North
Macedonia label. Greece played hardball. The country would not support Macedonia's entry unless there was a name change. However, in 2018, Macedonia signed the Prespa Agreement and renamed itself North Macedonia. With the barrier gone, it entered into NATO the next year. And that completes our journey through every member state. But why hasn't everyone else joined? Broadly, there are 5 categories of explanations, and the first is geographic. Article 10 of the North Atlantic Treaty reduces the scope of this question. It says that the parties may invite any other European state to accede to this treaty. The United States and Canada are allowed to contribute by virtue of being founding members. But this immediately eliminates Mexico, the next country south, from consideration. Countries further south, like Brazil, also need not apply, despite President Trump expressing a preference for Brazil's membership in 2019. It also rules out other traditional U.S. partners
Japan
like
and
Australia,
South Korea.
New Zealand, Pakistan, the Philippines, and Thailand. They were once a part of an organization called CETO. It was like NATO, but for Southeast Asia. It did not have the same buy-in from its members as NATO, though, and it folded in 1977. The Europe-only rule also eliminates Japan and South Korea, despite their common alignment with Western interests. Taiwan is in the same boat, except it's also missing the state part of the equation. The second...
Guys, I think in the second half of the 21st century, I think Japan is going to be so super important.
class
and
of
I think getting
explanations is dislike of NATO. Heading back to Europe, we can remove Russia from the discussion. The sentiment of Lord Ismay's philosophy of keeping the Russians out is mutual. We can also cross off Russia's alliance partners. The Collective Security Treaty Organization is Russia's version of NATO for Soviet successor states. Belarus is part of it, never mind the fact that its president, Alexander Lukashenko, is best friends forever.
All right, I know Putin isn't that big of a man, but what is it, Lukashenko? He is a beefy boy, huh? He's built. I wouldn't want to get in a fist fight with him.
With Vladimir Putin. Meanwhile, Kazakhstan has a small portion of its country within continental Europe, but it is in the CSTO as well. Armenia is not a part of continental Europe because the Caucasus lie just north. Sometimes it gets lumped into being European anyway. Regardless, they have the CSTO knock against them. In addition, Turkey does not have diplomatic relations with Armenia, so there would be a veto problem there too. The last CSTO issue is with Serbia, who is an observer state within Russia's alliance.
Bosnia, too.
There's also the slight problem of how NATO fought a war in 1999 against the predecessor state to Serbia, making NATO not particularly popular within the country. The third category is neutral states. For example, Austria was occupied by American, British, French, and Soviet forces at the end of World War II. But the country did not experience the same division as East and West Germany. Instead, the occupying forces withdrew in exchange for an Austrian declaration of neutrality,
Bundesgesetzblatt,
which its government withdrew in exchange for an Austrian declaration of neutrality, which its government passed a few months after independence. That keeps Austria out still today. Ireland is also...
Guys, I say with Austria, does Austria border Slovakia? But I mean, Hungary is in NATO. If Hungary got out of NATO, then Austria, Ukraine borders Russia, Ukraine border. But Austria, it's like, why would Austria even care about being in NATO, really? Because if there's ever if Austria is ever attacked, it has to go through NATO countries to get there. I mean, but I'm not saying that it shouldn't want to be in NATO, but I'm just saying it not being able to be in NATO, I think, as far as countries go, is not the biggest deal.
A neutral country, though underlying tensions with Great Britain have historically troubled its relationship with NATO as well. Malta has been a neutral state since 1980, and Switzerland is the most famous neutral country of all, holding true to its principles for more than 2 centuries, since the Congress of Vienna and Napoleon's final fall. Sweden also began a policy of neutrality after the Napoleonic Wars, and Finland pursued that policy during the Cold War. However, Russia's invasion of Ukraine soured both Sweden and Finland on their neutrality positions, and they will now be joining eminently. Meanwhile,
Turkey,
the Vatican straddles this category and the next, which is microstates. These include the Vatican, Andorra, Liechtenstein, San Marino, and Monaco. NATO as a military institution was never really built with microstates in mind, which is why these do not get very far. The final category is instability and conflict, the thing that stalled Albania's entry from earlier. We are witnessing this right now in Ukraine. Remember back to the entrapment issue that concerns alliance partners? NATO is well aware of it, and has a general policy to not admit countries until they have settled their territorial conflicts. This was one of the motivations that Putin had for the Russo-Ukrainian War. If Russia exacerbates tensions between Kyiv and Luhansk and Donetsk, NATO will be unwilling to make Ukraine a full partner. Indeed, the current war is history repeating itself. 14 years earlier, Georgia was getting close to joining NATO. That required settling issues with Abkhazia and South Ossetia. But Russia made this impossible by invading. And thus, there is no Georgia in NATO today. There are a few other less famous cases that fall under the instability umbrella.
Kosovo.
We can also cross off Moldova. It has been dealing with the separatist Transnistria region from its independence, and has Russian troops deployed on its de jure soil. Cyprus is out as well. This, oddly enough, involves another NATO member.
Isn't Great Britain kind of...
In 1974, Turkey invaded Cyprus. The war lasted 1 month until, you guessed it, some lines were drawn on maps. Since then, Cyprus has been de facto split into regular Cyprus and northern Cyprus. That alone would be a problem. But to make matters worse, Turkish forces have aided northern Cyprus since that time, which adds an extra layer of complication because of Turkey's veto power.
Wait, isn't that kind of a loophole, though? Because it says you can't administer a nation state into NATO when they're involved in a conflict. But what if the conflict they're involved in is with a current NATO member in Turkey?
Azerbaijan won't work either. It has the Nagorno-Karabakh region in dispute with Armenia, fighting a war over it in 2020. Thus, it is a no-go. And the same is true for Bosnia and Herzegovina. This is a unique case. They have a membership action plan with NATO, so the holdup is explicit. The country is actually 2 separate entities with one central government: the Federation of Bosnia-Herzegovina and the Republic of Srpska. NATO is requiring that all its military facilities come under the control of the central government. The Republic of Srpska is holding out. Finally, we have Kosovo. Slovakia, Romania, Spain, and Greece do not recognize Kosovo's independence. Fixing that would seem to be a precondition for Kosovo's membership. And there you have it. Why every country is or isn't a member of NATO. Let me know what you think in the comments. And check out my new book on the causes of the Russia-Ukraine war. And if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you next time. Take care.
Great channel. Glad I subscribed there. Didn't mean to do that. Really cool. Sorry if I paused and talked a bit too much, but this is really something that interests me. If you can answer any of my questions or tell me if I was wrong somewhere, or any comments in general would be greatly appreciated. Hope you guys are having a good day. I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.